All right, if everyone take a seat, we're going to go ahead and get started with the meeting today. Where are we? All right, welcome to the October 25th, 2012 meeting of the Planning Commission. Let the record reflect that we have a quorum with Commissioners Hill, Ferrari, Friley, Robbins, and myself. In attendance as well is Mr. Tyler Leonard from the Duval County School Board, and also attendance to my far right over here are members of the City Planning and Development Department and a representative from the City Office of General Counsel. And seated on the far left is our assistant today, Glenda Thompson-Wiggins, and our court reporter, Diane Tropia, in front. Let us stand and recite with enthusiasm the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. It is important that an accurate record must be kept of speakers and what is said. Everyone who wishes to speak before this commission must fill out a blue speaker's card, including applicants and agents, and place them in the basket besides the speaker podiums up there to the front. These cards are located at the back of the room. These cards will be used to determine if there's any opposition to any particular item, which may affect the scheduling for the presentation of the items to be heard. The speaker's testimony is taken down by the court reporter, so it is important that the participants speak clearly into the microphone, and only one person should speak at a time. Any tangible material submitted with the speaker's presentation, such as documents, photographs, plans, drawings, etc., will be used in a presentation will become a part of the public record and will be kept by this commission. Therefore, please retain a copy of anything submitted if it is needed. As a courtesy, please place any cell phones, pagers, or audible devices on silent mode now. Items are generally addressed in order in which they are listed on the agenda, which is located at the back of the room. However, items may be heard out of order for the sake of efficiency or to accommodate scheduling conflicts. This commission's bylaws provide that each member of the public who speaks before this commission is limited to a 3-minute presentation. Timer is available and may be used, so presentations must be focused and concise and should address only the items before us and limited to the criteria upon which our decision must be based. Decisions by this commission on rezonings, including PUDs and land use amendments, are recommendations only. The recommendations are transmitted to the Land Use and Zoning Committee of the City Council, which ultimately votes on these matters. The LUZ Committee may or may not follow the recommendations of the Planning Commission, so it is recommended that public hearing notices be checked for additional public hearing dates beyond today. Unless specifically deferred by the LUZ Committee, items voted on by the Planning Commission today are heard before the LUZ the following Tuesday typically, but please note the LUZ meeting that's following this one will be Wednesday, November 7th. Tuesday is kind of a big day with the election. So November 7th, Wednesday, will be when the LUZ meeting is held, which is 6 days from today. And there will be another public hearing and vote at that meeting. The Land Use and Zoning Committee meets in these chambers at 5 p.m. For any questions regarding a specific application, please see a Planning Department staff person seated over here to my right. At this time, I will ask the members of the Commission to address the minutes from the prior meeting dated October 11th, 2012.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the October 11 minutes as presented.
I have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes from October 11th, 2012. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, at this point we are going to go through the agenda real quickly and just go through which items we are going to be hearing in what order. If you'll look at the agenda on page 2, items 1 and 2, E1261 and AD 1259 are being deferred due to no report. There was a community meeting that was being scheduled by Councilmember Redmond. It was noticed to be heard today, so I will just see if there is anyone here to speak, but know that we're not going to be voting on this matter, and if you can, come back to the next meeting. So we'll open that up. Or actually, I'll take this up. Is there anyone here that does wish to speak to E1261 or AD 1259? I don't see anyone, so I'm going to open and defer that to the next commission meeting. Item 3 will be heard today, E1262, on page 2. On page 3, items 4, 5, and 6 will all be heard today. On page 4, at the top, items 1 and 2 under deferrals are already deferred until the November 15th meeting. And then items 3 and 4 may look familiar. Those items, there was finally a community meeting for those. I'm told it went well, and there seems to be community buy-in, and so it looks like there will be a agreement that's going to be signed, and those will be eventually coming off. But at this point, unless there's any opposition to anyone on the commission, we're going to defer those into the next meeting. Top of page 5. All of the items on page 5, 1, 2, 3, and 4 will be heard today. Page 6, items 5, 6, 7, and 8 will all be heard today. And then on page 7, all of those items as well, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 will all be heard today. Page 8, the item at the top there, 2012-507, is deferred until November 29th. There was some land added to the legal description, and so there had to be a renotice. So we will not be hearing that one today. It's noticed to be heard on the 29th of November. So that one will be deferred. And then at the bottom of page 8, 2012-141 will be heard, and we're going to take this one up first as we have City Councilman Jones here, and are going to address that issue. And then we'll start, after we do that one, with the beginning of the agenda as it is laid out. And then I believe that's it. So we'll start with 2012-141. If staff could introduce the item.
And to the chair, I was going to defer to Dylan Reingold from the Office of General Counsel and then follow up with comments. But we've worked closely with the councilman, and we do support this legislation.
Perfect. Mr. Reingold.
To the chair and the entire commission, it's nice to always be back here. Thank you very much. Just want to let you know that the Planning Department has recommended approval of this item. Councilmember Jones was working on some issues regarding non-conforming uses, and generally in our ordinance code, if you are a non-conforming use and you cease to operate for 12 months, then you lose the ability to start your business or whatever operation back up again. Councilmember Jones was a little bit concerned that some of these uses shouldn't be given a full year to reoperate. He was concerned specifically with some types of commercial uses that were adjacent to residential uses, and that's felt that in those situations, because of the proximity of a commercial use to residential uses, it would be more appropriate to limit that time period of expiration to only 6 months instead of allowing a business or operation to reopen again after a full 12 months or a full year. So thus, originally in the bill, there was a reduction of 12 months to 6 months. But then as part of the amendment that's in your package, it specifically talks about just that being applied, the 6 months that is, just being applied to non-residential uses adjacent to those uses which are adjacent to 75% residential areas, and then they would be subject to the 6-month rule. The policy furthers the intent of the comprehensive plan and Part 7 of the zoning code, which promotes the reduction or loss of non-conforming uses through time. And just available here for additional questions, as Mr. Folks said. He was here also as well, and just would like your support. And Councilmember Jones is also here if you would like to hear his thoughts.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Is there anything you wanted to add, Councilmember Jones?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the commission. It's been a while since I've been here. We had a tragedy that happened in District 9, January the 1st, where a gentleman was murdered. And when we met with staff, Sheriff's Office, Fire Department, Planning Department, we found out that the non-conforming use was for 6 months, but the property had to be valued at less than, what, $4,600, I think. and very few structures are valued at $4,600 today in today's market. So what we're trying to do is just limit it so that, in this case, the structure was a convenience store, and it was built back in '64. And back in those days, people were transportation dependent, so people did use the store. Now that's changed. It became a nightclub, and the neighbors, and it's surrounded on all four sides by single-family residential homes in the Grand Park area. So we felt like this was the best way to address this without putting undue hardship on those non-conforming usage that may front on other commercial properties. So appreciate your support for this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just so I understand, staff, this is specifically a grandfathering issue. It doesn't allow the use to be grandfathered if the use hasn't happened there for 6 years or it's been closed for 6 months. Apologize.
That is absolutely correct.
Okay. All right. Is anyone else here to speak to 2012-141? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to commission.
Through the chair to staff or to Mr. Reingold, I just got a question, general question. Who decides when the use ceases or begins, and what's that definition? I mean, just curious if that will be an issue in the future.
Through the chair to the commissioner, and certainly the planning department can give you their viewpoint, but traditionally what's been done is we check their electricity or their water meters and to see if those are operating. That's kind of a pretty good indicator of usage.
Mr. Chairman, I move recommendation to the LUZ for approval of ordinance 2012-141 as presented.
I have a motion and multiple seconds to recommend approval.
Actually, and I'll clarify what Jason Gabriel's about to say. As I heard that was the approval with the amendment that was within your packet.
Through the chair, Mr. Reingold, yes, as presented in our packet.
I'm assuming the second still stands. Okay, motion and a second to approve as amended per the report. 2012-141. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you both very much.
I want to thank the commission very much, and thank you for taking us up early. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
All right, back to page 2. E1261 and AD 1259, the companion AD. We're going to open both those up. If the owner or agent could approach the podium. Oh, I'm sorry, those are deferred. That makes sense. E1262. If you could state your name and address, yeah, come on up. State your name and address. Our court reporter is going to swear you in, and then we'll have staff introduce the item.
My name is Brian Girona at 2563 Spring Pond Lane, Jacksonville, Florida, 32221.
Sir, I need you to raise your right hand for me, please. Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Application for zoning exception E1262 is for property at 7037 Commonwealth Avenue. This is just on the other side of 295 on the west side. The request is to allow for retail sales and service establishment in the IBP zoning district. The property is developed with a small strip center, and what they'd like to do is put a martial arts fitness type studio in one of the suites. We reviewed this. We found that there is other commercial activity in the area, so this would not be an infringement on an industrial property. We feel that it would be consistent with the comprehensive plan, and it would promote appropriate infill at the right location. So we are recommending approval with no conditions.
All right. You have a recommendation for approval from the staff, and I don't show any opposition here. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else here to speak to E1262? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to commission.
Seeing no further discussion, I move that we approve E1262.
I have a motion and a second to approve E1262. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. You have approval.
Thank you very much.
Next, on the top of page 3, E1263. Just state your name and address. And you're an attorney?
Yes.
So we don't have to swear you in. So, yeah, just name and address.
I'm Bill Curtis, 701 Market Street, Unit 109, St. Augustine, Florida 32095.
Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Application for zoning exception E1263 is for property at 6834 Old Kings Road South, near St. Augustine Road. The request is to allow for an establishment with a retail sale of beer and wine for own premises consumption in the commercial neighborhood zoning district. As noted in the staff report, the Planning Commission has approved 2 previous exceptions in this same strip center, and virtually identical to the request. However, they were not commenced within a year of the issuance of either of those orders, and so those orders expired. The Planning Commission previously approved those and was supportive, as were we. We feel that this is a good location, as we have consistently said. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and we recommend approval with no conditions.
Thank you. You have a recommendation for approval, and there's one other speaker right here, but it says Mr. Bakovac?
Is my client, the
Yeah.
tenant
And
applicant.
It says here just available to answer questions, but he
Right.
is in support of the application. But other than that, there's no other speakers cards. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Nothing, just
Okay.
available also if anyone has questions.
Is there anyone else here to speak to E1263? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to commission.
Seeing no further discussion, move to approve E1263.
I have a motion and a second to approve E1263. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. You have approval.
Thank you.
All right. E1264 and AD1261. We're going to open both of those. And if you could state your name and address, our court reporter will swear you in.
Yes, my name is Matthew Rowley, 3249 Ashridge Drive, Jacksonville, Florida 32225.
Sir, would you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Application for zoning exception E1264 is for property at 8150 Lone Star Road in Arlington. The request is to allow for a church in a split-zoned property, which is zoned commercial office and commercial residential office. The companion deviation seeks to reduce the required minimum lot size to allow for a church in these zoning districts from 2 acres to 1.46. The property is developed with an office building. There are numerous institutional uses in the vicinity, so we feel that this would be consistent with the pattern of development as well as promoting commercial infill as called for in the comprehensive plan. With regard to the exception, we are recommending approval with one condition, and that is that the area of the sanctuary or main auditorium shall not exceed 1,356 square feet. The reason for that condition is because that coincides with the formula that would be used based on the number of parking spaces available on site. The balance of the building could certainly be used for fellowship hall, Sunday school, church offices, anything else. So it simply restricts the size of the sanctuary, since that's what our parking formula is based on. With regard to the deviation, we are fine with the request as is and recommend approval with no conditions.
Thank you. Mr. Rowley, you have approval. You have a recommendation for approval from the staff with one condition. Are you familiar with and in agreement with that condition?
Yes, I have a question about that.
Okay.
Is that a permanent cap, or is that just tied to the parking? Like if we were to go through the process of adding more parking spaces down the road, would we be able to increase the square footage of the auditorium?
It is possible to do an amendment to order to alter a site plan. The question here is whether that would be an intensification of use, and our review of the project as is was based on what you have out there right now. I don't have enough information to say that we would necessarily be supportive of a request for a larger church, although in all likelihood I think we probably would be. If this condition goes through as it is, that would not currently allow for you to add additional spacing or add additional sanctuary without coming back to the Planning Commission and asking for a larger sanctuary size. So that's where it's at right now. We believe this is Arlington. We've had some issues in Arlington with people questioning what they get based on what gets approved, and we just wanted to give some assurances to the neighborhood that if this is what the Planning Commission approves, this is what they're going to find out there. And if you wanted to come back and the church is a success, we'd certainly be willing to look at that again at a future time.
Okay. That's what I was wondering.
Okay.
I also have another question, if I may.
Okay, yeah.
I noticed that the AD was reducing from 2 acres down to 1.46. I'm not sure if that's a typo, but on the application and on the survey that I have, I think it lists 1.43 acres. I don't know if that's a big deal or not.
I don't think, would staff have a problem with changing that to 1.43?
That would be a de minimis, I would take at this point. That's minor enough that we could do the 1.43.
Okay, because it's referenced throughout the AD and the exception as 1.46.
I would imagine if you got 5 different surveyors out there, you might get 5 different numbers anyway.
I just didn't want to have an issue.
Yeah, but that's not going to cause a problem for the use that he's trying to commence the use out there.
No, in my capacity as zoning administrator, I would approve the plans.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you're okay with the amendment then, as it is?
Yes.
All right. I don't have any other speakers cards. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
That's all.
Okay. Is there anyone else here to speak to either E1264 or AD 1261? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to commission.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of E1264 as conditioned.
I have a motion and a second to approve E1264 as conditioned. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of AD 1261 for reduction of the required minimum lot area from 2 acres to 1.43 acres.
I have a motion and a second to approve AD 1261 down to 1.43 acres. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries as well. You have approval. All right. Moving on to page 5. 2012, 602, and 603. And we'll take these up separately, even though they're similar area, just because they are, one's residential, one's commercial. But we'll open up 602 and 603. Name and address, and then we'll introduce it.
Paul Harden, 501 Riverside Avenue. Mr. Chairman, you might want to point out this is a land use and the companion rezoning
Yes.
for that land use.
Yeah, 602 is the land use, and 603 is the companion rezoning, and the land use is for adoption. This has been once through for transmittal. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As was mentioned, this application and the next 5 map land use amendments, and the after that, the 4 text amendments that we were going to be discussing this afternoon are all coming back to you after being transmitted to state agencies for their review, and they are being presented to you for their adoption. In this particular case, Ordinance 2012-602 consists of property on the west side of San Pablo Parkway, south of Beach Boulevard, and north of Crosswater Boulevard. It consists of 113.44 acres. Currently, the land use designation is business park. The request is to take it to low-density residential. The department has reviewed this application and recommends approval.
The companion application for Plan Unit Development 2012-603 seeks to rezone approximately 113 acres from IBP and RR-acre to PUD. The rezoning is being sought for the purpose of developing approximately 320 single-family homes. There will be a variety of 50, 60, and 80-foot lot widths. A minimum number of 80-foot wide lots shall be at least 10% of the total number of lots. I would like to, before I go further, that you should have a revised written description that's dated October 19th. That's in addition to the one in your staff report. Staff has reviewed this application and finds that if the land use amendment is approved, then this will be consistent with the comprehensive plan. We've also reviewed this and found it is consistent with the internal compatibility. Like I said, this PUD will contain a mix of different lot sizes. The lot sizes are similar to the lots in the adjacent Pablo Bay and the surrounding subdivisions in the community there. We are recommending approval of 2012-603, subject to the 6 conditions in your report. Obviously, there's a modification to Condition 2, which will be the revised written description dated October 19th, 2012. Also, for Condition number 6, just at the very beginning, if the use of the property to the southeast is commercial. So we'd like to add that modifier in there to the southeast. The rest of that condition stands. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Harden, you have a recommendation for approval on both, but there's conditions on the rezoning. Are you familiar with those, in agreement with those?
Yeah, well, 6 I would like to amend. We went through this same issue during the transmittal stage and came to an agreement which is inconsistent with this condition. I would like the condition to read, if the use of the property to the southeast is commercial or assisted living facility, there shall be no shared driveway or shared entrance road with a residential subdivision, period. If the use of the property to the southeast is residential, there'll be shared driveway access. The piece they're talking about was a land use map amendment that was a small scale, therefore just went through one round. In that, at that time, we talked about having cross access. The LUZ committee approved it without that cross access. That piece had a site plan with it.
Right.
So, the issue came up because of the neighbors, but now that we've moved our entrance, they don't care about the cross access. We have subsequently sold that piece without access through the, without access into the LDR, consistent with the PUD that was approved before. So, I would like to amend that condition to read that if it's residential, we'll have shared access, but if it's commercial or assisted living, there is no shared access. And by the way, assisted living is not residential, because the reason we had to go to CCG here is that assisted living is only allowed in commercial uses and not any of the multifamily use. One addition, there is language we're going to add into the written description that's contained in the written description of the other PUD you're going to hear today, and it relates to an access road off San Pablo to the north into this piece. It's that same language. Where's Bruce? Oh, Bruce. The language about when C and D are developed, there'll be the road through there. Steve wants that in this written description too. I have no objection to that. So, but with that, I'd ask for approval or adoption of the land use map amendment and approval of the PUD with the condition as changed, because that fight's already been fought and that piece of property's been sold.
Okay, and staff, moving the assisted living from the portion that requires cross-access to the portion that limits it, is that an issue with the recommendation that you've given us?
No, I'd agree with Mr. Harden that that's not a true residential use, and we would want to only allow access through there if we had compatible uses.
Okay. All right. I have one speaker's card, and I'll let him come up, and I'll give you some time at the end if you want to address anything. Unless there's anything else you'd like to add right now.
No, but I was just going to make a suggestion to help the staff. If you'll approve it without a condition 6, since I'm going to amend the written description anyway to add in the language that Devenal wants, I'll add in the amended language in 6 as part of the written description, if that's okay.
Okay.
Let's see where we go, because I know we're going to have a discussion about the way we're going to forward your recommendations to the Land Use and Zoning Committee. Let's hold off on that until you're in the right posture.
Yeah, no, but yeah, that makes sense. Mr. Devenal?
Steve Devenal, 1 Independent Drive. I'm actually representing the Pablo Bay Homeowners Association. We don't have any, first of all, on the condition number 6 from the staff's report, we don't have any problem with the change that Mr. Harden just described. The second issue, which is taking the condition regarding the access road for parcel A through parcels C and D, we understand he's going to make that change to the written description, and so that's fine as well. And then when we come back, I guess on parcel A, actually on this one, there is a temporary construction access issue as well that we had agreed to, that the Homeowners Association and the developer had agreed to, and so we just asked that that condition also be written into the revised written description as well. And that's really the only open issue, and I didn't hear Mr. Harden mention that, but I understand from our conversation earlier that he's going to add that condition as well before we go to LUZ. Other than that, we're fine with all the changes that we negotiated in the spring.
Okay. Mr. Harden? Sir. The temporary construction access, is that language that you intend to add, or do you have, A, do you have issue with it, and B, is that something you're going to add in the written description?
The temporary construction easement is, access has already been built. The planning staff asked us not to put it in that language because it was temporary. So we took it out in discussions with the staff. I think we can probably figure out some language that's not offensive to them and would be still consistent with Mr. DiBenal's. Just so you'll know the explanation, if you'll remember this PUD, you got the LDR, which is the big piece. On the frontage of San Pablo, you got two commercial pieces, and behind the frontage on San Pablo, it's commercial, you have a mixed-use piece. What we agreed is we would have the trucks come off San Pablo through the northerly commercial piece, through the mixed-use piece, into the back of the LDR once the roads were approved in the LDR piece. But because C&D won't be developed, that temporary access may not be a road where a road actually ends up in C&D, and it's confusing if you got the temporary language in there, and we had that discussion about the staff. So I think the staff is correct. I don't mind agreeing to what we already agreed to, and I'll try to work out some language with them since I'm going to ultimately amend that anyway.
And is the language along the lines of the temporary access will be to the north so that it doesn't come in that main boulevard? I mean, is that the crux of the language that the homeowners want?
There'll be trucks on the main boulevard, but some of the trucks will come in the temporary access as well. Yes, it's going to be to the north to try to have as much as possible also use that north access temporarily. That won't mean there won't be trucks on Crosswater, but there'll be relief during the construction through the temporary access. Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
No, sir.
Is there anyone else here to speak to either 2012-602 or 2012-603? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to commission. And just real quickly, needed to clear ex parte communication. I ran into Mr. DiBenal this morning, and he mentioned there was a couple recommendations they were hoping would have here. And that was the general discussion we had.
Shame on him.
I know. And real quick before we get started, if the planning department would address the LUZ has kind of requested that there be a bit more communication with them on the recommendations that we make to them. There is somewhat of a difference in having recommendations be as amendments to the actual order versus amendments to the written description, and how those are handled after everything's finalized. And I'll give the staff just a couple seconds to kind of lay that out, because they do want to know from our standpoint if we really want something based on the public hearing and discussion we had to be an amendment to the actual rezoning, or if it's just okay to have it as a text amendment. So if you don't mind, staff.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's been requested by OUZ is the cover letter that we provide in the Land Use and Zoning Committee book. We put a cover based on your decisions and your recommendations ahead of our staff report for them to consider. But it doesn't provide at this time any clarity as to whether you, as the Planning Commission, feel that it should be these conditions that you have forwarded should be part of the ordinance and therefore could only be amended by way of a PUD-to-PUD rezoning, or whether you would be amenable to letting them be incorporated into the written description, in which case they wouldn't necessarily have to go through the PUD-to-PUD route to be modified. They could conceivably, depending on what they are, be modified either administratively or through a minor modification. And so they're just looking for some clarity on how strongly you feel about each condition that you're forwarding to them, and whether you think they should be as part of the ordinance, or you would be okay with them being slipped into a revised written description. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and the understanding I have, regardless, there's usually a public hearing that's going to be involved, whether it's written description or an amendment. Attached to the actual ordinance. It just depends to what level it goes. And oftentimes, we come up with things that need to be included, but it doesn't have, it's not based off real strong opposition. It's just something that should be in the written description so that it's developed in a certain way. There's other things that we feel really strongly this needs to be a part of it, and the only way to have it out would be a PUD to PUD. And I think that was the request, was just some more clarification on our part when we ask for an amendment to either the written description or to the ordinance itself, that we just communicate where we would like it to take place. And again, they're all recommendations, but just so there's some communication so they know to what degree, we feel on each issue. All right, that being said, just bring it back to commission for any comments or questions or discussion.
Through the chair first to Mr. Harden. The 6 conditions as presented in the I'm talking about the PUD, of course. Those 6 conditions, the change to the written description to the 19th is going to most likely be moved because the LUZ will have a new written description, is what you're proposing.
We could say this is the 25th if you want to. And the 25th written description would include the language that we've agreed on in the other PUD about the permanent access out the back, if you will, of the LDR. It would include language that would cover Condition 6 as amended, and then would contain some language as to the temporary access. So it would be just the same, be dated the 25th with those 3 changes.
Thank you, sir. And to the fellow commissioners and the chair, what my thoughts are right now is that there seems to be no new information, just merely reconciliation or consensus on some items. So I think the recommendation to LUZ would be that the items we're discussing, or at least that I would be in favor of supporting in a motion, would be in a written description versus an order or a part of the ordinance. But to that end, and just to be sure that what we recommend does go forward, Mr. Harden, looking at those 6, the second one on that list is the one that deals with the revised written description. I may postulate later on to say a written description that reflects, and this is where you come in. I want to make sure I'm hitting all the right points to make. That we have, I guess, one item is the permanent access through the back. Could you elaborate a little bit as far as like parcel to parcel? Is that the one that comes in?
If you will look in the next PUD, that language as exactly will be put in this PUD is in that PUD.
All right.
So it's and basically what it says is at such time as parcels C and D are developed, and the lot and the single family lots in A which adjoin them are developed, there'll be access through C and D to San Pablo Parkway to the LDR, and it's going to be a private access, and it may be gated. And that I'm going to just take that language that we worked on with the staff and just add it into this PUD as well.
Terrific. Thank you, sir. Is that different in any way from this temporary construction access that you said is there now? But
it is. Okay. It is that at such time as the roads are accepted by the city in the LDR piece, in the top front part of the LDR piece, we'll have a temporary access through what we're calling C and D.
And that's really the only 2 that I had in my notes. Is that
well,
access to A through C and D was the big idea.
Right.
On that. Then there's the temporary construction, and then there's the C and D and adjacent residential in A are access through C and D. Those 3 are the areas that I thought are going to wind up in a new written description.
Right.
Okay. In your preference. Okay.
And then you'd take out Condition 6 altogether.
That's where the rub kind of comes. That I'll be quiet and listen to other commissioners, but because you had those other ones in there, that makes 6 moot, is kind of your point.
No, 6 isn't moot. It's just 6 says if you develop the parcel A into either commercial or assisted living, you have to have access with the LDR. And what we're saying is only if it's residential will we have access. If it's commercial or assisted living, we won't have that access. And indeed, we went through that issue when that parcel was approved, and its PUD was approved inconsistent with having access to the assisted living facility.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harding, because I stand corrected that, yeah, I have an X through number 6, that bottom line, however the wordsmithing comes along, the bottom line is that if it's residential, we'll have a shared access. If it's non-residential, which includes ALF, no shared access.
That's right.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Through the chair, I would just be in favor of keeping condition number 6 and just changing the language versus getting rid of it altogether, just so we're clear and we do kind of through this hearing lay out a clear path for the LUZ. I'm in agreement also with changing the date in condition number 2 with the other wordsmithing. Outside of that, I'm okay.
Okay. I guess my thought on it is I feel like condition 6 is something that would normally just be in the written description anyways, and you know, a lot of these recommendations come up because once the planning department reviews it, they would like to see something changed. You know, I guess my preference would be to not get in the habit of having a whole bunch of written description items as conditions to this unless there really is, you know, a strong reason that this has, you know, there was public outcry. I feel like it's in here because it was an issue that was different from the written description. I would be more in favor of putting this just in the written description, and the recommendation being that this change be in the written description. But again, I'm not making any motions. Any other discussion?
And just to clarify on my behalf, and this is to my fellow commissioners, are we looking to take the 6 conditions as presented with the modifications and just make them part of a written description, or what is the posture that we're in right now, just so I'm clear?
Yeah, no, I think 1 through 5, well, 1, 2, 3 are always going to be conditions of our PUDs, and they will stay as conditions to the ordinance. 4 and 4 too, honestly, and 5 I think we're leaving as a condition as well. I'm really just, I think condition 6, if we make a recommendation, would not recommend that as a condition to the ordinance, but just as a change that needs to happen in the written description. A lot of times when these go from here to LUZ, the written description does change, or LUZ requests a change, and then so you know, we are in the posture to recommend a change to the written description by the time LUZ hears it. And you know, I don't want to get lost in the weeds of always having to argue back and forth, where does this fit? But I think applicants requesting it, and I don't see any real big issue with it. So that's what we're talking about is, you know, 6 coming off of an actual amendment to the ordinance and just being part of the written description. And we just need to give some clarification to the LUZ which one we're doing. So does that kind of make sense? And I don't know, staff. Mr. Gabriel?
Yeah, I mean, what you said, I think, articulates it perfectly. And I think the posture we're in, and if I'm hearing somewhat of a consensus, I know Mr. Friley had seemed to have a preference for having the condition in there, but if the overall consensus is to, of course, condition it with the 5, with the written description to be amended to be October 19th, because that's what you have before you right now is the October 19th.
Right.
Of course, I know Mr. Harden plans on having an October 25th one at LUZ, and that's fine. But for now, if you're going this direction, you'll want to condition it with 1 through 5, with the tweak to number 2 for October 19th. And then you, as an editorial, which the department will include in their letter, or at least an oral report at LUZ, again, what I'm hearing from the direction here is to, in addition to those 5 conditions, ask that the LUZ committee consider including 2 extra components that would be in the written description, and hopefully by that time Mr. Harden has already integrated those 2 in, and the 2 would be essentially condition number 6 converted into the written description, along with, you know, adding the southeast and the ALF component. And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Harden can correct me if I'm wrong, taking the vehicular access provision from ordinance or the written description to 2012-605, I think it's subsection C, something to that effect. So sorry to be redundant, but basically 5 conditions as tweaked, and that's condition number 2, and then 2 components that editorially will be conveyed to LUZ for incorporation to the written description.
And I think it was 3 because there was some desire to have some language to the temporary access that's the
right.
department agreed on. So I think it would be 3 changes to the written description, 5 amendments to the ordinance. So.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and we'll clarify this. This is new. But it might be that the desire was to simply let them know which ones you would be amenable to allowing them to put in a revised written description, and I understand Mr. Harden intends to do that. But in some cases, it might be where we have a situation that someone wouldn't otherwise necessarily intend on amending their written description. I don't think it's the idea that you guys are saying they have to amend it so much as either adopt these as conditions, but we won't object if you put it in a revised written description between now and LUZ.
Okay.
It's just kind of how semantics.
All right.
Any other discussion? Mr. Chairman, I move approval of 2012-602.
I have a motion and a second to approve 2012-602. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I move recommendation of approval of 2012-603 from IBP to PUD with the first 5 conditions as presented in the staff report, with an edit of number 2, changing the date from October 17 to October 19. And in lieu of condition 6 of the staff report, a recommendation to LUZ that the revised written description address permanent access to the back of parcels C and D. Secondly, the temporary construction access. And thirdly, the shared access to residential adjacent property.
All right, let me try this out. I have a motion and a second for 2012-603 as condition and amended and editorialized. We'll figure out a better word. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries as well. And you're up here for 2012-604 and 605 will open as well.
Paul Harden, 501 Riverside Avenue.
All right, staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ordinance 2012-604. This property is located immediately to the east of the previous application. It consists of a little over 30 acres. The request is to take it from business park to RPI. The department has reviewed the application and is recommending approval with an asterisk that will limit the amount of development in this particular case to a maximum of 514,000 square feet of non-residential development.
The companion application for plan unit
Let me
development.
clarify something, Bruce, before you go. Limit the non-residential development to 500,000, not all of the development.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
This companion application 2012-605 seeks to rezone approximately 30 acres from IBP to PUD. The rezoning is to develop a mixed use of single-family commercial office, neighborhood retail and sales, and multifamily dwellings. The property is currently undeveloped and landlocked by PUD 2012-328 to the east. The project will have access through this PUD to the San Pablo Parkway and a possible future connection to the proposed single-family PUD to the west, 2012-603. If the land use is approved, then this development would be consistent with the 2030 comprehensive plan. And we have reviewed it for internal compatibility. The PUD written description contains a clause which identifies that the PUD site plan is conceptual and what is normally called a bubble site plan. Staff is recommending a condition which requires a minor modification to evaluate any future development site plan for compatibility as the area develops. Again, we are looking for the external compatibility. The surrounding area is really suburban in nature, but there are some intensive commercial shopping centers north of this at the corner of Beach Boulevard and San Pablo Road, and some commercial development closer to the JTB Parkway to the south. Again, staff is going to recommend approval of 2012-605, subject to the 5 conditions in your report.
And so you're not amending the condition, you're just, all these conditions are just as they are in the report?
The conditions are as they are.
Okay. Mr. Gabriel?
If staff could just, for the record, state, I believe there's a memo to the to the file regarding the site plan?
Right, and like I said, we do have a memo that we consider that verifies consistency with the section 656.341 of the PUD site plan requirements. Again, that was my note about the requiring a minor modification to the site plan for more detailed development as that becomes available.
Okay. You have a recommendation for approval and 5 conditions. Are you aware of an agreement with those conditions?
I am.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I want to comment on your editorializing and just as a practical consideration. And I'd say this respectfully, just because I've been doing it for a very long time. People tend to do PUDs down the road if they're not done in the first 60 days. Piece of property is sold 3 or 4 times. What the guy down the road gets typically in his hand is a written description and a site plan. It's pretty rare that they'll actually pick up the ordinance as well, because the guy selling it to them doesn't show that to them. So to the extent you put things as a condition, and I understand there would be some where you would want as a condition, and you don't put it in the written description, you end up defeating the purpose of what you want in that condition. So just as a practical matter, just as you're deciding which ones you're going to condition and which ones you're going to put in the written description, typically it's more effective to be enforced if it's in the written description. Now, the point I think that folks and Bruce were making is that there are some things that you don't want changed by minor mod or administrative deviation or the substantial compliance. And those are kind of sometimes life or death issues.
Yeah.
And you may want to put them as a condition. But even when you do that, you ought to put it in the written description too.
That's not a bad idea.
And because just again, you're 5 years down the road, people don't pick, and Tony can probably confirm this, when you get the document, you don't normally get the ordinance. And what will happen is from time to time, somebody will change that condition. So there'll be an ordinance 2012-101 that has this condition that nobody will see, and then there'll be an ordinance 2014-108 that changes that, and then that won't change in the written description because it's attached to the old ordinance. So just consider, as a practical matter, the way most things are developed are the guy who's developing it's got the written description in one hand and the site plan in the other and the substantial compliance in front of him. And typically people don't go back and look at ordinances, and just for what it's worth.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. But I think this one is clean. There aren't any issues. The bubble plan is because we've got commercial in front of it, and LDR behind it. Likely the LDR will kind of come into here. We don't know how far back the CG will come in here, so we don't have a site plan. It's going to be kind of a market-driven thing. We suspect that, well, the LDR is going to be the first to be developed, and then probably the commercial and the frontage. And so we want some flexibility. And what we'll do is when we get an actual user, will come back with a site plan through the minor mod process that I think Bruce mentioned, or excuse me, folks mentioned, so you'll see it again, I guess is the point.
All right. Mr. DiBenau, would you like to add anything? I've got a speaker's card for you. No? Okay. Is there anyone else here to speak to either 2012-604 or 2012-605? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to commission.
Mr. Chairman, I move a recommendation of approval of 2012-604.
I have a motion and a second. Is that with asterisk, I'm assuming? Sorry.
That's quite all right. Yes, sir. From BP to RPI asterisk, that limits the maximum non-residential square footage to 514,000.
Okay. Just for the record, I guess. I have a motion and a second to approve 2012-604 with the asterisk. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries.
And similarly, Commissioners, I move a recommendation of approval of 2012-605 with the 5 conditions as presented.
I have a motion and a second to approve 2012-605 as conditioned. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries as well. Thank you, guys. All right. Moving on to page 6. We have Land Use Amendment 2012-606 and Companion Rezoning 2012-607. Mr. Atwill, if you'll state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, Commissioner and Commissioners. Fred Atwill Jr., 9001 Forest Acres Lane, Jacksonville, 32234.
Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ordinance 2012-606. This property is located at 8020 Pritchard Road. It's located on the south side of Pritchard Road, and it is immediately south of the existing West Side Industrial Park. It consists of 38.24 acres. Currently, the land use designation is LDR. The proposed request is to take it to light industrial. The department has reviewed this and is recommending approval.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Application for rezoning ordinance 2012-607 is the companion, seeking to rezone the same property from from residential low density 60 and residential rural acre to IBP, Industrial Business Park. As Gary stated, we feel that this is compatible with the character of the area. This property is in proximity to the West Side and West Lake Industrial Park DRIs, which are obviously by their name industrially driven. We've also had a couple of other land use and zoning changes in this area which have trended towards industrial development, so this would be consistent with the trending in the neighborhood, and we are recommending approval with no conditions.
All right, you have a recommendation for approval on both items, and I don't have any speakers cards here. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, sir. Just for the record, the address is incorrect on the
agenda?
On the agenda,
okay.
Yes, sir.
Is it correct on the staff report?
It should be 80-20. It's been 80-20 all the way along, and on here it's 80-10. I just noticed it.
Okay.
That's a typo on the agenda, and the staff report is correct.
Okay, perfect. As long as the staff report's correct, we're good. But I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, is there anyone else here today to speak to 2012-606 or 2012-607? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to commission.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve 2012-606.
I have a motion and a second to approve 2012-606. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I also move we approve 2012-607.
I have a motion and a second to approve 2012-607. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries as well. Thank you. You have approval. 2012-608, the land use change, and then the companion rezoning 2012-609. Staff, City of Jacksonville, so if you'll just introduce it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ordinance 2012-608. This property is serves as a buffer between the existing Jacksonville-Baldwin rail trail located between Chafee Road and Halsema Road, and the property is on the north side of the trail. And serves as a buffer between the trail itself and the Navy's White House field. This property was purchased using Florida Communities Trust monies, and one of the conditions was that the property would have a land designation of either recreation or conservation. So the property is being requested to be changed from light industrial to recreation and open space. The department has reviewed this application and recommends approval.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Application for rezoning ordinance 2012-609 is the companion for the same piece of property. The request is to go from the IBP zoning district to the recreation and open space zoning district. As Gary pointed out, this is in very close proximity to both the rail trail and the White House outlying field. The ROS would be consistent with what we would want to see adjacent to our natural areas, such as the rail trail. This would also be compatible with the what we like to see around the White House field, which would maintain a lack of development, which is what the Navy looks for, in order to maintain the integrity and a lack of light pollution out there so that they can conduct their nighttime landings. With that, we are recommending approval of the request with no conditions.
All right. Is there anyone else here today to speak to 2012-608 or 2012-609? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to commission.
Chairman, I move approval of 2012-608.
I have a motion and a second to approve 2012-608. All in favor? Opposed? That motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I move a recommendation of approval 2012-609.
I have a motion and a second to approve 2012-609. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries as well. 2012-610, I don't see any more applicant. The city. But we'll carry on. I mean, I think it's fairly straightforward. So open the public hearing for 2012-610, and staff, if you would introduce the item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ordinance 2012-610. This property is located at 10891 Garden Street on the north side of the road. The property consists of just under 20 acres. Currently, the land use designation is AGR 2, and the request is to take it to AGR 4. This property was part of a much larger development known as Pine Grove Dairy. The accompanying rezoning, the current zoning for this property is AGR, which would be appropriate. So there is no accompanying zoning, just the land use. The department has reviewed this application. It is appropriate for the area, and it's primarily allowing an individual to, he purchased this property, didn't realize that he needed more acreage given the existing land use designation, so it is to allow for him to build a single-family home on the property. The department recommends approval.
All right. Is there anyone else here to speak 2012-610? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to commission. And I know we've had this happen from time to time on these little things where there's not much land, so.
Move approval of 2012-610.
Have a motion and a second to approve 2012-610. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. All right, 2012-611. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request is to, since the city has disbanded the Industrial Technical Advisory Committee, ITAC, this request is to allow taking references to the ITAC that currently appear in the comprehensive plan, and just to formally take those references out. The department recommends approval.
Is there anyone else here today to speak to 2012-611? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to commission.
Mr. Chairman, I move a recommendation of approval of 2012-611.
I have a motion and a second to approve 2012-611. All in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. 2012-612.
Ordinance 2012-612 is to address a minor problem that has come up. In the allowable densities in the maximum density in the low density residential land use category is maximum of 7 units to the acre. The next category up is medium density residential, and unfortunately that minimum is 10 units to the acre. So with this language, we're asking that the MDR minimum density could be something greater than 7 units to the acre. The department recommends approval.
Thank you. Is anyone else here today to speak to 2012-612? Seeing none, I'll close public hearing and bring it back to commission.
Seeing no further discussion, I move to approve 2012-612.
Have a motion and a second to approve 2012-612. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. 2012-613.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is another technical change to the comprehensive plan. In this case, it's to the transportation element. Currently, map 3B refers to the 2030 cost feasible plan projects map. That particular map has been revised and updated. That's the result of the work done by the First Coast TPO. They now have a 2035 cost feasible plan, and therefore we would like to substitute the more up-to-date plan in the comprehensive plan. The department recommends approval of this.
Is there anyone else here today to speak to 2012-613? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to commission.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of 2012-613.
Have a motion and a second to approve 2012-613. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. 2012-614.
Thank you. This is the last one, and thank you for your patience all. Ordinance 2012-614. Originally, when the comprehensive plan was first adopted some years ago, the state statute limited the number of dwelling units for small-scale land use amendments. Small-scale land uses are 10 acres or less, and they were limited to 10 units per acre. A couple of years ago, the state eliminated that limitation. We had proposed to take that limitation out of our plan. One of the council members had expressed some concern, so we have come back and added language when a small-scale land use amendment is proposed in either the business park or general commercial, neighborhood commercial, or the RPI land use category. The default limitation is still going to be 10 dwelling units per acre. However, if the accompanying rezoning is a PUD and that certain additional criteria are met, and the department finds that the criteria has been reviewed and finds it acceptable, then a land use could be approved to have more than 10 units to the acre in these four predominantly non-residential land use categories. The department is recommending approval of this.
Is there anyone else here today to speak to 2012-614? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to commission.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of 2012-614.
Have a motion and a second to approve 2012-614. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Appeals update? You want to go through that real quick? We're shooting for a record here, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got a couple of appeals to discuss. You may remember the liquor store in Arlington from the last session that we had. The applicants have appealed that denial to land use and zoning. We don't have established dates yet, so I'm just going to let you know at this time that they've been filed, and then once we have follow-up on that, I'll bring you up to speed as we go along. You may remember the Show Bar over in Arlington that was going to be a nightclub with dancing entertainment establishment on Cethary near Merrill. The applicants have appealed the denial of the waiver and the exception that you guys shut down. And then surprisingly, there's been an appeal on the Mellow Mushroom. And In fact, we've had 5 appeals by 5 different parties filed on the Mellow Mushroom, and procedurally, I'm not sure how we're going to proceed on that. I'm going to we'll get together with the LUZ chair and with OGC, but 5 folks have appealed the Mellow Mushroom decision as well, and we're waiting dates and all on that. So that's kind of where we're at.
Is that 5 fees? That'll help make up for some of the lost money.
Actually, yes, we collect our legislative services charged 5 different fees.
There you go. I appreciate that. Any new business or old business anyone has? Mr. Gabriel.
Just quickly, I would just, we have our historic subcommittee that has had our first meeting with Mr. Robbins and Ms. King and department. I think we had a very good discussion, and we anticipate having, I think, a meeting coming up soon again. I would just suggest, per our bylaws, that we have 3 members of that subcommittee. At this point in time, we have 2, Tony Robbins and Lisa King. Or unless Mr. Robbins wants.
Just as a point of information, I strong-arm Mr. Hill into joining us as well. So we're up to 3. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. That solves that. Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just one point of business. These are now expired.
Yeah, I got.
Have you heard have you heard anything from Mr. Shad about this at all?
I don't think they've implemented any new plans, so I don't know what we're going to do going forward. Because I don't think anyone has a valid pass or a means of parking anywhere. So, any update?
Not at this time. I wasn't prepared to speak on the issue today, but we will look into it and hopefully have something for you at the next meeting.
Okay. Yes.
One more thing. My name's been left off the back, so I don't know if y'all are trying to get rid of me or what, but
you hurt Pablo's
it might work.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. We'll take care of it.
All right. Anything else? Meeting adjourned. Here, Diane. Are you secretary?